You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is an author, communications trainer, and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share with your friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, we've been doing this podcast for about 5 months now. And we just kind of showed up out of nowhere. I know who I am and you know who you are, and I know who you are and you know who I am. But our listeners, they don't know us. And, for all they know, we could be axe murderers who just happen to show up and start talking about presentations.
And there goes the end of the podcast. And thus,
there we go. Yeah. So let's tell a little bit about how we got into this business, our stories, basically.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So if we want to do this in one episode, so we'll just have 6 or 7 minutes each. So who should start? Should I start or do you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I love the expression that you used. What was it? Opening up the kimono.
Oh yes. Opening up the kimono. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to open up the kimono. Okay. So basically how I got into this business, that story has 2 parts. And the first, there's a short-term part and a long-term part. The short-term part is basically it comes down to I needed money. It's back in 2013 or something like that. 2013, I think. Yeah. So 2013, and I finished walking across Turkey, and I come back to Istanbul, and I'm completely broke. Like I was so broke that at one point I didn't even have enough money to ride the bus. Like I don't mean enough to buy a month's bus pass. I mean I didn't even have enough money to ride the bus one time.
The single ride.
Yeah, the single ride. So I didn't even have enough money for a single ride on the bus. And so I needed some money. And so I look around and I'm like, okay, what do people need? What are people asking for? And people were asking for help with their presentation training. And they asked me, can you help us with the presentation training? And I said, sure, I can help you with presentations. So I basically went home and read a book really fast on what is a presentation. And I had done Toastmasters before, so it wasn't a completely new subject for me. So that's the short-term story. It's basically Matt's in a new town and he needs money. That's the short-term story. The longer-term story, because it's 9 or 10 years later, and I'm still in this business. So why are you still in this business 9 or 10 years later? And so now we get to the longer-term story. And I guess that the longer-term story is just that I like doing it. If you look at the patterns of things that I've done in my life, it's pretty much all comes down to the one common thread that runs through all of them. It's basically you got group A here on the left and you got group B there on the right, and they're not talking to each other or they're miscommunicating or whatever. And you help them communicate with each other better. And that's basically a presentation. And so being a presentation trainer just happened 10 years ago, kind of by dint of luck, to be something that I like doing for that reason. And so that's why 9 or 10 later I'm still doing it. So how am I doing for time? Have I run over my 6-minute limit?
No, you have 2 more minutes.
Wow.
2 or 3 minutes to go. And I would love to hear more details. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've basically told my life story in 3 minutes, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Okay. So what details would you like to know about? What should I talk about?
Well, first of all, let's start with the monthly bus ride.
Okay.
So now,
you mean
you can take it?
Oh yeah. So fortunately, because
just to be clear,
fortunately for most of the past 10 years, I've been able to ride the bus.
Okay.
What else would you like to know?
You mentioned. I already know most of the details, but I assume this will be very interesting for our listeners as well. You briefly mentioned, just after my walk across Turkey, and then you continued. And hang on a second, What do you mean walk across Turkey?
Walk across Turkey, like I put on a backpack.
Tell me more.
Okay, So it was.
Okay, you make it sound like it's something that everybody does whenever they wake up in the morning and say, "Okay, you know what? Today I'm going to walk across Turkey." No, not everybody does that, and I think it's a huge thing. So that's why I wanted you to give us a little more detail.
So it's 2011 or something, and I'm back in the U.S. at that point. So it's 2011. I'm in the U.S. I'm very unhappy with the way things are going in my life at that point. It's not a good moment for me. And I basically say, and I've got a window of time, a year or a half a year or whatever, where I can pretty much do anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't want to let this window pass. Or when this window passes, I want to be able to say that I've done something cool. I want to say that I've done something big and unusual. I don't want to waste this period of time. What can I do that very few people do in this situation? Well, I can walk across a country. And so I amongst the many things that I could have done, one of them was walk across a country. And I kind of liked that idea. And I was just like, well,
and when you're thinking this, did you mention where you were when you were thinking this?
Yeah, I was in the U.S. when I was thinking about this. And I was thinking, well, if I walk across the U.S., for the total time for this project, or the total time for this walk, I've got like 6 to 9 months. And if I walk across, so I started looking at the sizes of countries. And I was like, okay, well, if I walk across the U.S., it'll take too long. If I walk across Russia, it'll take too long. If I walk across, California or some state in the U.S., it probably won't take long
Vatican.
enough. Yeah, if I walk across the Vatican, it'll take like 3 minutes. So I need something else. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I could walk across Turkey, and I've been there before, and I know a little bit of the language, know a little bit of the geography. So it just kind of became walk across Turkey. And so I spent about, 6 months or so getting ready, walking every day and making sure that my body would be okay with that, and making sure that my body would be okay with carrying a backpack every day and stuff like that, and training up the body to do that stuff. And then in August of 2012, I strapped on my backpack and walked across Turkey.
How did you feel during the first couple of hours or even a couple of minutes when you started this?
Terrified. I was.
As far as I know, you started from the West Coast, right? The West Coast of the country.
Yeah, I started from the West Coast and walked to Iran and walked to the border on the East Coast, in the eastern part of the country. And but yeah, I was absolutely, utterly terrified when I started. I was sure that I was going to die, or that something bad was going to happen to me. I was pretty much convinced of it. I was like, oh my God. What's going to happen? So yeah, that's the short answer is I was utterly terrified.
And did you ever feel like giving up or quitting?
Many times. What stopped me? Well, giving up or quitting pretty much every day. I felt like giving up or quitting. What stopped me was I figured, well, I've made a lot of sacrifices to do this. I've sacrificed my career. I've sacrificed my life. I've sacrificed pretty much everything that I have in order to do this walk. And there is no way that I can get partway through the walk and stop it and sacrifice that too, because I don't get to go back to the way things were. I don't get to go back to my career. I don't get to go back to my life. I don't get to go back to any of that. None of that stuff exists anymore. So I have no choice but to finish this walk. Mm-hmm. That's what kept me going.
Just to give some context, how long was the journey? How many kilometers?
It was 1,300 kilometers. It took me seven and a half months to do. So yeah, 1,300 kilometers.
So you walked about 200 kilometers per month, right?
Yeah, it was about that 200 kilometers per month, somewhere around there.
Okay. And you said you have a backpack, and how does that work? Like, you're carrying all your belongings with you, and I assume you have to make weight choices before.
In my backpack, I had what was in my backpack? I had a tent, a one-person tent. I had a one-person tent, a sleeping bag, an air pad for sleeping, and changes of clothes. And that was pretty much it. And somewhere else in the world, I had like 1 or 2 boxes of other stuff that I kept. Like there was a winter coat that I kept back in California, just in case I needed a winter coat after the walk or something like that. So it's not like at that point, at that point I had my backpack and like 1 or 2 boxes of other stuff in the whole world. We're not talking about 1 or 2 boxes in the back of my car. We're talking about Matt's sum total of belongings in this world.
And how was the experience as you crossed? As far as I know, you didn't cross. Wait, first of all, you walked on roads, right? Or did you walk over?
Yeah, I walked on
terrain
roads
as well.
I walked on roads. All of it was on roads. Before I came to Turkey, I looked at the map, Google Maps, Google Earth or whatever, and I found a couple roads, and if I strung them together, they would get me across Turkey. And I wanted to stay off the major highways because, if you're walking on a major highway, first of all, you don't meet any people. All you see is, discarded cans of Coca-Cola and other garbage on the side of the road. And I wanted to meet more than that. So I chose, I chose.
That's a pretty low standard.
I wanted to meet something better than trash on the side of the road. Yeah, that's a pretty low standard. So, I kind of found a middle ground between local roads that would be hard to string together and big highways that, if you were driving in a car would get you across the country really fast, but for a walker weren't ideal at all. And by the way, one thing about picking these roads or about walking alongside of the roads is at one point, one of my favorite memories is at one point, like 95% of the way. So here it is, I've just got a couple weeks left. I'm almost done with the walk. And someone suggests to me, wouldn't it be a lot faster if you just walked on the other side of the road? And their idea was that I would
so
be
you never thought of that.
Well, yeah. I would be so much more successful a hitchhiker if I walked on the same side of the road that people were driving on, because I always walked against traffic. And somebody suggested to me that I walk on the other.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, somebody suggested to me that I walk on the other side of the road, and I just laughed because I was thinking, okay, I've spent so many hours and days and weeks and months walking on the side of the road. You would think that if I was hitchhiking, I would have thought of that. So, but I wasn't hitchhiking. I intentionally wanted to avoid hitchhiking. I wanted to walk every meter of the distance.
So you didn't take the major highways. You took the the roads in between cities and the villages and stuff like that. What is your fondest memory of these 7 months?
Oh, well, there isn't just one. There's like a whole string of them.
I can imagine, yeah.
Like if, for example, one of the most beautiful moments, naturally beautiful moments, was I was walking somewhere I was kind of in south central Turkey, down near between Karaman and Silifke. And Silifke, these are 2 small towns. So basically between larger towns that people might have heard of, between Konya and Adana. So I was in that area. And there was a huge storm that passed through, like rain and lightning and thunder, just like I had never seen or heard before. And I thought that it was going to break off the top of a tree and the tree was going to come crashing down on my tent and kill me. It was one of the most amazing lightning and thunderstorms that I've ever seen. And it passed as quickly as it came. And I got out and I stood there and I watched the storm passing because it was moving fast. You could see the clouds moving in the wind. I stood out there in the middle of the night in my socks, watching the storm passing and hearing the coyotes howling because, during the storm they couldn't howl, but as they saw it pass by, they could howl. And I thought, there is no other person in this area. I am the only one who gets to see this. And The only reason I get to see this is because I'm crazy enough to walk across this country. And so, there
That's
are
amazing.
many memories, but that's one of my favorites.
Speaking of those memories, I know that you wrote a book about this journey, and it would give me big pleasure to announce it, to link it. It's called, remind me, what was it called?
Heathen Pilgrim,
right?
Heathen Pilgrim, yes.
Tell me more a bit about the book.
Well, I had originally intended to write the book immediately, like in the first couple months after the walk. But I ended up writing it about 5 years later. And there are many reasons for the delay, but they basically come down to Matt got caught up with life. Matt's, found some presentation training and started eating
got
food.
Into presentation trainings.
Yeah, he got into presentation training, and he had a roof over his head, and there was all this stability all of a sudden, and Matt was loving life. And 5 years later, he wrote a book. So it took him, and that was the main reason for the delay. And the reason that I chose Heathen Pilgrim was because one of the definitions of heathen, heathen, of course, the main definition is, a rough and rude person without religion. But one of the other definitions, one of the secondary or tertiary definitions is a person who is not of your religion. And I'm not a good Christian. So when I'm in Christian lands, I'm not really a good Christian. And I'm not Muslim at all. So I'm definitely not a good Muslim. And then I'm not Jewish either. So pretty much no matter where I go, I'm always of somewhere else. I'm always not of that group. And so that's why I chose heathen. By the way,
and I think it goes well with the word pilgrim.
Yeah. And, pilgrim, obviously, somebody who walks a lot and is going to one particular destination and probably working some religious muscle, all of which walking across Turkey was for me.
Yeah. It's a great book, by the way. I know you personally. I read the book more than once, and I love the narrative in the book, how I was literally able to put myself into those scenes that you were talking about. I was there having coffee with the local people, sleeping in the gas station or in the towns that you were visiting. So I highly recommend everyone to buy the book and read it, because it's a fantastic read.
Excellent. Well, you have promoted my book better than I ever have. So thank you. And by the way, we're already past our time limit for today. And it started out, we were both going to tell our stories, but then we started talking about the walk, and that can go on forever. And so let's wrap it up here with Matt's story today. And then, so next week we'll do Alper's story. So how did Alper get into this business? That's what we'll do next week.
We'll do that. Yeah. But before we close today, I want to ask you, do you remember how we met, you and I? Because it was because of this trip. Everything started in this trip. You were this ex-president of Istanbul Toastmasters. I was the current president at the time, and I had access to the shared folders on the server, on the club server, and I saw all these files, created by Matt Krause, edited by Matt Krause, and I was like, "Who is this?
Who's this guy?" Yeah,
and who is this guy? Because you weren't even in Istanbul at the time, let alone in the club. And I was curious. And then one day you sent an email to the Toastmasters group declaring that next week you were finishing your walk and you will be happy to meet with anyone who would like to join you. Do you remember that email?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, you wrote that email. That was the first time I knew that I could see that this Matt Krause really existed. He wasn't some phantom lurking on the server.
This weird guy whose name I've seen a million times is an actual person.
Yeah, he actually exists. But the thing is, that week I was flying to Amsterdam. I wanted to come because you invited all of us, those willing to come to Van. And I really wanted to, but I was flying to Amsterdam. And I wrote you an email saying, "Hi, Matt, this is Adrian, blah, blah." Like, you've been on the road for 7.5 months. You probably couldn't wait for this thing to end.
Yeah, true.
And what did I ask you? I asked you,
Look, I would love to join.
Delay a week.
Next week I'm flying to Amsterdam. Can you push it a week?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you did.
And I did, yeah. I went to my host at that time. At that time, I was staying in Tadvan, which is a small town on the other side of the lake, across from Vaughan. So I was staying in Tadvan, and I asked my host, can I stay an extra week? I need to wait for somebody. And he said, sure, no problem. So I
why?
I stayed.
Who is this somebody?
I stayed for this extra week so I could wait for somebody. Somebody named Alper who was happened to be in
you doing that, you doing that put a certain pressure and responsibility on me to collect as many people as possible. In the end, I believe we came like 6 or 7 people. We rented a minibus. So it was a fantastic memory.
Yeah, that's right. I never thought about it from that responsibility angle. So Alper has pushed it a week.
I couldn't show up alone.
Alper has pushed it a week, so he needs to gather a bunch of people and show up for the final day of this walk of this guy who he barely knows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, the breakfast that we have in that place in Turkey is very famous.
Yeah.
The Van breakfast, and I really remember those. Okay, so let's wrap it up.
Yeah, so we can go on and on about this forever, but let's wrap it up. And so next week we'll do Alper's story and how Alper got into this business.
All right, sounds good. I'll see you next week.
Thank you very much, Alper. Good questions.
Thank you. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.
All right, talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.